attached on some of these. What's still attached, this glistening, that's your innermost meninge. Don't remember what that's called. The pia mater. Okay. Of course, I can just have a brain like this and ask you to name parts externally. So, of course, this would all be cerebrum, cerebellum. That's a bad one for that part. Pons, medulla oblongata. And then the lobes. Frontal. Parietal. Temporal. Occipital. All right. Now this is a frontal cut. So it's like you basically cut kind of close to that central sulcus. And so here, you look close, you can actually see the difference between the gray and the white matter. And what do we call the gray on the very outside? Cortex. So I could pin this and ask you to name that, and that would be cerebral cortex. Or if I say name the tissue, gray, versus if I pointed here, you'd say white. Gray matter, white matter. So that's that. Okay. This also shows the corpora quadrumina, which, if you kind of pull this apart, you can see it. So this one, we basically just remove the cerebellum so you can very easily see it. So the whole thing is their corpora quadrumina. These two, the bigger ones, those are the superior colliculi. These are your inferior colliculi, small ones.
So those are the 4 bumps you're talking about, right?
Yes, those are the 4 bumps, exactly. Okay. So now inside, this is the corpus callosum. This is your fornix. That is the pineoglandular body. So it's kind of where the fornix and corpus callosum kind of come together, just below it. That's produces melatonin. If I have it pinned here and say name the chamber or ventricle, what would that be? Lateral ventricle would be here. This is thalamus and hypothalamus, so that's where your third ventricle would be, which you kind of can't see it here. I don't know if y'all can tell. This is just a little bit lower right here than here. So the third is very shallow, and y'all can feel if you want to. It does go down a little bit there, though. Because people are like, oh, how's their ventricle? You feel that? I mean, it's very, very slight, but it does go down there. That one's not good. Let me see if I have a better one. This is good. It's going to get... Someone cut that one, so I'll do this one. I don't know if you can kind of see... Well, I kind of messed it up. Right there, because this is your third ventricle. Right here would be your fourth. So that little bit of indentation, that's the cerebral aqueduct. And then, of course, from the fourth, that'll be the central canal. Like I said, thalamus, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is going to be right here. So the back, you'll be able to see the optic nerves, optic chiasm, and still attached, the pituitary gland. So that all comes from the hypothalamus. And actually, the pituitary gland is there, too. It got ripped off. So on here, where that hole is, that's where the stalk, the infundibulum of the pituitary gland would be. See, if I go like that, that's basically hypothalamus. Let's see. What would that be?
Is it the arbor vitae?
Arbor vitae. And then the outside, that's just the cerebellar cortex. You can kind of pull the gray parts apart. They're called folia. They kind of separate. The folia of the cerebellum. Let's see what else. That's it, other than nerves. Which some of these we went over with the diencephalon. This one, if I remember, yeah. So these, y'all remember what that's called? Olfactory bulb versus olfactory tract. Cranial nerve 1 is olfactory. So if I point to that, you would say olfactory bulb, and then you just put 1, because that's the number. And now this one's not as good. This one's better. So you start at the top, and you basically work your way down to do to 6. So 2 is your optic nerves. Of course, that's your optic chiasm, optic tracts. which they show a little bit better here because that part's removed. So you can kind of see that's flush with the brain where this protrudes. So nerve versus tract. This is 3, which you probably won't know the name, but I'm going to tell you. Ocular motor. 4, you go a little below and to the side, really tiny, thin. It's called trochlear nerve. On the sides of the pons, this one, you can kind of see where it was. See this one still. This is 5, trigeminal. Tri's 3, that's why it's so thick. It's actually 3 nerves that fuse together. And then 6 isn't on here. It would be right there. It's basically between the pons and the medulla oblongata. They're so skinny, they're really hard to keep. That is cranial nerve 6, abducens. That tiny, tiny thing right there. So those are the cranial nerves. And I'll go over the cranial nerves again. Just remind me before the practical, when we don't do any new material and I review, I can get them back out and go back through.
Would you ask those on